Greetings. Welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. Joining me today is Liverpudlian Ian McNabb. If you're familiar with the song Birds Fly, Whisper to a Scream, then you'll know the frontman, lead singer, songwriter, guitarist of the band, the Icicle Works. From 1984 to 1990, the band released 5 albums. The original lineup of Ian, Chris Sharrock, drums, and Chris Layhe, bass vocals, called it a day in 1991. Since then, Ian has had a very prolific solo career with some 15 albums to his credit, not including several releases of B-sides, alternative, and unreleased tracks, culminating with his latest, Nabby Road, released just last year. Mr. McNabb, or Boots, as he's sometimes called, we'll find out about that later, has also performed with such artists as Ringo Starr, Neil Young and Crazy Horse, and Mike Scott of Waterboys fame. And in 2006, Ian reformed the Icicle Works, playing live dates. In 2008, his autobiography was published, entitled Merseybeast. I like that title. Thanks, Ian, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Well, let me get situated. Here we go. Well, let's go back a few years. So you were born in Liverpool, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was born in Liverpool on the 3rd of November, 1960 at Lourdes Hospital in Wavertree in Liverpool. And as far as I'm concerned, nothing dramatic happened. There was no crossfire hurricane, and lightning didn't strike. And there is absolutely no significance in the date.
So the stars didn't align for.
The stars were not aligned, and they haven't aligned ever since.
All right. Well, that was a shot anyway. So talk about your childhood. Any fond memories that you had?
Yeah, well, I'm an only child. My parents were Bob and Pat. Sadly, neither of them with us anymore. They very much encouraged me to do whatever I want. I was probably a little bit spoiled, as only children tend to be. My parents stayed together, and as a kid, I was very interested in I was the kid of the Apollo generation, the moon landings and all that, the Gemini project and all of that. And I was very much into football, soccer, as you guys call it, English football. I was very interested in movies. My dad took me to see 2001: A Space Odyssey when I was 7.
Yeah.
So that was that got the brain working. And I wasn't really that into music. There was always music in the house. My mum enjoyed Sinatra and the big musicals. We went to see The Sound of Music, and so we weren't a musical family by any stretch. Mm-hmm. And then when I was about 12, we had a TV show in the UK called Top of the Pops, right. Which was on every Thursday evening at 7:30 till 8 p.m. It was obviously it was before the internet, and it was a show that everybody watched. But we didn't watch it because we weren't particularly musical. We'd have the other side on. Anyway, one particular Thursday evening, it was on that side, and Mark Bolan and T-Rex came on. And I can't remember whether it was Get It On or Telegram Sam, or it was one of those, and I was like, wow, what the heck is this? Mm-hmm. This guy with this beautiful curly hair, little Jewish guy with a flying V and all sparkly clothes. And I didn't have a clue what he was on about, which made it obviously all the more appealing. It's like, I've got to crack this code. What is this, And then a couple of friends at school, we were talking about it, what you guys call a water cooler moment. At school, I guess it would have been a general assembly moment when you'd be talking about what was on TV the night before. And then it began.
Right.
Going to secondhand record stores, picking up everything, crate digging, connections, buying the music papers, which were very important in those days, waiting for an interview with somebody that you really respected. And that was when the journey started. And the journey started obviously for a lot of people, but where it was different with me. And I was thinking about this the other day because I was telling somebody about this. And I went, all the kids that I was in school with, well, not all of them, but the ones that I was in class with, they saw Mark Bolan and Bowie and all of that stuff. And, they just carried on studying and ended up getting really good exam results and going to colleges and universities. And, they're all fucking retired now, It's like, why? It was like Roy Neary in Close Encounters, It's like I went back and I'd started building something. And then it wasn't enough for me to just appreciate the music. I had to get the guitar. And then because I got a guitar, and my mum and dad were very much, especially my dad, was very much a thing of, if you're going to do something, do it properly and finish everything you do. So he bought me a Spanish guitar. And I went to classical lessons. I wasn't sitting with a bunch of kids smoking dope, strumming Beatles songs. I was learning how to do it properly. And then I went to theory lessons on the side. He was like, whoa, this is all very serious. And then I left school earlier than I would have done because I went to music college. But of course, by the time I got to music college, I knew most of what they were teaching in music college because I've been having private tuition for about 5 years. So when I got to music college, all I used to do was, that's when I started, chasing girls and drinking, so that's what I did at college when I was 16, same as what everybody else does. But I'd stay out of the lessons, and then I'd turn up after 3 months and get 100%. So Earl Howarth, my tutor, I'll never forget this. He came up to me, he went to Ian, can I just have a word with you? And he goes, listen, don't think I'm impressed with you turning up and getting 100%. You know all this stuff and you're just doing this, you're just goofing off. So if you know all the stuff, don't come in and get 100% because it doesn't look good. And everybody else just thinks, well, how come he's got 100% and he hasn't attended a lesson? So, there's your bike, off you go, So that was that. And then I was, 17, 18, then started with the thing that we had before, punk and new wave.
Right. Well,
over here. Sorry?
Can you remember one of the first concerts that you attended, that you went to?
Yeah. Do you know what? I was kind of like because I was an only child, and my dad drove a cab. He drove a black Hackney carriage cab, which was like the posh, not posh, but it's like the top end. And he was like a bit of a snob, and he'd be driving around in the cab taking on fares, but he'd talk like a Spitfire pilot, Like, Roger, mobile to Lime Street Station, coming in now. Okay, we have yes, and it was all a bit like that. So there was this kind of snobby element to it. So he thought that gigs, and all, he thought the rock and roll stuff was bad news. What he wanted me to do was to be like a proper classical guitar player, playing with the Philharmonic,
Yeah.
And so he kind of held back on me, saying, "Oh well, I might join a band." But before I joined a band, there was loads of concerts on in Liverpool. But I was kind of around sort of mid-70s. We had a place called the Stadium, which I was a little bit too young for, and this was where you had all the great 70s bands, AC/DC, Sensational Alex Harvey Band, Genesis, Floyd, you name it, Zeppelin. They all played in Liverpool, but I was just a little bit young for it.
Right.
And and we thought, or my parents thought, that the quote was always, all sorts goes on at those concerts. Make of that what you will. I think they're referring to pot smoking and drinking and all manner of great things.
Great.
So I was like not allowed to go. And then when I got to about 15, my dad said, okay. I said, well, there's a gig on. So they started letting me go to gigs. And I can never quite remember. I know my dad came with me to one gig, which I think may have been Barclay James Harvest.
Oh,
Kind of like an English progressive rock.
One of my favorite bands, actually. Yes. Oh yeah.
Oh man, I'm so glad to hear that. I
Yeah.
understand. I was playing them the other day, and obviously that's another chat if we go down that road.
Right.
But I loved them and still love them. So I think he took me to see that show, and then he kind of declared it was okay for me to come to these gigs because it wasn't crazy. There was a whiff of reefer, but it wasn't insane or anything. So then I started going to gigs, and I think the next one I went to was Bebop Deluxe on the Modern Music Tour.
Oh yeah.
Which was just wow, I mean, the thing started off with like science fiction music, and the whole backdrop of the screen was the robot from Fritz Lang's Metropolis.
Yes,
and that was how the show started.
It started that way. Wow.
And it was just like, and of course, the thing that you cannot believe when you first go to a gig, a proper gig, is how loud it is.
Yeah.
Because the only time that I'd ever heard music that loud would be at the fair.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only time that you heard music thunderously loud. So it was just getting over how loud the bass drum was. When they started playing, the kick drum would actually kick you. That's why they call it a kick drum.
You could feel it. Yeah, you could definitely. Yeah.
And it was just mind blowing, and that was it. I was hooked. I was plugged into the mains, baby.
Bill Nelson.
That was it. Was
just a guitarist. I mean, he's really underrated. He's but a great. I mean, I love his style. I've always loved his style.
Well, I did a radio show about 10 years ago, local radio show, and they said, "Would you make a list of people that you want to have on the show?" And I made a list, and Bill Nelson was right at the top. And we had him on the show, and I was just like, it's just mind blowing. But he's very self-effacing, quiet, shy Yorkshireman.
Yeah.
And also talk about postmodern. As soon as he's made a record, he doesn't ever want to have anything to do with it again. Do you know what I mean? That's what he was like with Bebop Deluxe. But he's come to realize that there's so much love and appreciation for Bebop Deluxe now. I mean, they were kind of plowing a similar furrow as Bowie was.
Right.
But and one deficit that Bill had was obviously he couldn't sing like David Bowie, who could. But there is nobody that's come from the British guitar stable, and you can include Beck and Page, Clapton, all of them, Richard Thompson, all the great British guitar players. Bill Nelson is well deserving to be in that roll call, but he never gets mentioned.
Right. He doesn't. Well, I have a another YouTube channel where I post songs from different bands, and a lot of them are real obscured, but I posted a couple of 3 Bebop Deluxe songs, and I get so many reactions, positive reactions to those, and so you find out that the fans are out there,
and there's going to be a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of kids around these days. I mean, I still do speak to the occasional younger person, even though I barely go out anymore. And, we have this kind of idea that, they're all on the phones and they're all playing Xbox, or they're all watching bloody X Factor, or America's Got Talent, or, the the Kardashians, or we just automatically assume that they're all basically dumb, you know. But of course, that's wrong to do that. There are an awful lot of young people who are starved of what we had. I mean, I don't know how old you are. I'm 63 this year, but it's like, you know, when I was, like I just said to you, you know, when I was 12, 13, Mark Bolan popped up. I mean, imagine hearing Jeep still when you're 12, you know, and they don't really get served anymore, these kids. And the things that they do get served are sort of, it's like they've been done by focus groups, a lot of them, you know. Some of these alleged, you know, edgy punk new wave bands that they get thrown, and then you realize that, hey, these guys have been around for years. Someone's just said, oh, let's do this, let's tweak it a bit, make it and aim it at those kids. Yeah. And also the thing that they throw at the kids.
It's kind of half-baked. Yeah.
And they can smell it, you know. Yeah. And so when you start, if you get the opportunity to recommend a few older bands to them, because of course everything's on YouTube now. Right. You know, you can just go, hey, well, I'll tell you what, just type in this Made in Heaven Bebop Deluxe.
There you go.
And they put that on them. Like, a lot of them are like, what? What's this? This is incredible. And then, of course, if they're interested, you can just follow it. The rabbit hole never ends, as you know, with the internet. You know, you can go to, and then you've got a link to the website where his latest stuff is, and there's every interview, and then there'll be pages of some guy showing you how he does it, you know.
There you go. That's right. It is never ending. It is, and there's a lot of sources out there, for people to tap into. And, you know, like you said, the good music is going to travel, and I always say that, but it will. Yeah, and it's reaching younger audiences, because they know what's good, and they're tired of a lot of stuff that passes as crap these days too, you know.
Well, I got lucky, you know, with Birds Fly, Whisper to a Scream, or Whisper to a Scream, Birds Fly, as it's known over your end. Yeah. Oh, that took a long time, but that ended up in the Stranger Things TV show.
Yeah, that's right.
And you know, it's been very kind to me, and you know, I'll do. When we do gigs, I only play in the UK now these days. And whether we go out as Icicle Works or whether I'm doing my solo malarkey, you know, behind the bar, that my audience is of a certain age, obviously, you know, but behind the bar, it's usually students, you know, it's usually kids in their late teens, early 20s, young girls, young lads. And they'll be standing there all night with their arms folded, looking like they'd rather be somewhere else.
Right.
And then I'll break into, you know, we are, and they go, did he write that? It's like one of those things where the song has traveled a lot further than I, you know. Yeah. And yeah, I do believe that. I do think that, you know, the only criteria that you can put upon yourself these days is if you're trying to make something that people like, you're not particularly going to like it that much. The chances are there, maybe if you've got 50-50 chance that they'll like it. So not everybody's getting served. Whereas if you just absolutely do exactly what you think you should do, be it writing or whatever it is, if you believe in it and you think it's a quality thing, you'll just have to hope that somebody else will as well.
Yeah, you're right. You know, well, that, you know, I agree with that so much, because I've had people, like, again, going back to my channel, that comment and say, well, why hasn't this song, you know, gotten more hits? I'm surprised that this band isn't bigger than they are. You know, and I want to say to them, well, if they were, you probably wouldn't like them anymore. You know what I mean? You know where I'm coming from? What?
Oh, there was always that, wasn't there?
Yeah, you reach that sellout point. You know, once you.
Yeah, it's like the bands that you've been going to see for ages. All of a sudden, that happened with REM for me.
Oh,
because I've been banging on about them for ages. I mean, it didn't take them. Well, you know, it took them 5 albums to become a big band, really, like a band that people had heard of. It wasn't until The One I Love was a hit single
Right.
And that was on album number 5, you know. But I'd been going on about REM to people, and nobody was interested. And then when they did hit,
Yeah.
and of course it was when then it went up when Losing My Religion and Shiny Happy People was everywhere, and everyone was coming up to me going, "Have you heard this band REM?"
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Fuck you, man!
You know,
I've been going on about these since 1981. Shut up."
You know, I like their early material, like Boxcars, Gardening at Night.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, Wolves
the
Lower.
Chronic Town EP.
Yes, exactly. That's what I got. That's what I got. You know, my dad, when I grew up, he on our
Where
hi-fi.
are you, by the way? Whereabouts in America?
I'm in northeast of Dallas, Texas.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So my dad, growing up, he would play Herb Albert, the Tijuana
Oh yeah.
Brass. Yeah. Have you ever heard of Baja Marimba Band?
Yeah.
Okay. I can't find anything on CD. Well, you do, but it's not the albums. It's like a best of.
Oh God, you're definitely like me. It's like I'm just such an obsessive. It's like
Yeah.
I even try and make it a little bit harder for myself these days, you
Uh-huh.
know.
Uh-huh.
It's like I won't go on Spotify and I won't go on YouTube,
Right.
but I'll wait until I'm going on a crawling round the bloody crate days.
Right.
And sometimes I limit myself to there's got to be at least 2 people dead in the band.
Right.
And if one of them, if there's one original member,
Mhm.
it's probably going to be the bass player, you know.
Uh-huh. 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 And he exactly. And he would play Glenn Campbell, and he would play Simon and Garfunkel. I remember
Yeah.
hearing those, sounds growing up. So
Well,
yeah.
that's good stuff to grow up around, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. Well, talk briefly about the cabaret group Daybreak. What led you to audition for that?
Well, yeah, well, that's what we call that. That was what we originally called. Then they changed the name to Young World. I remember I was in town with my mum. It's in the book, and you mentioned the book, so you've obviously seen it. And I was just learning to play the guitar. And we did, back in the days when you'd look in the window of a music store and they'd say guitar player wanted, no time wasters, influences, must have own equipment, all of this malarkey. And there was one there, somebody saying that they wanted a lead guitar player. So my mother went, right, I'm going to write that down. And I went, I'm not a lead guitar player. I can't play lead guitar. No. She went, yeah. So she gets home. We get home and she rings them up. And I'm like, no. And long story short, so went for the audition the next day and I got the job. So I went from being somebody who was learning the guitar to somebody that joined a cabaret band. When I say cabaret band, it's like we used to play the working men's clubs. I mean, I don't know what the equivalent would be in the United States. I've never seen any, in all the many times I've been over there, I've never seen any places that looked like these places where we used to play. And they were basically venues which were in housing estates. They weren't in the city centre. They were always in the suburbs.
Right.
And it's where the working men would go on a weekend and listen to and play bingo. And, they'd get the, chicken in the basket.
Yeah.
And they'd have a comedian on and a cabaret band. But cabaret band mean you didn't play original material. You played, the big tunes of the day, and that's what we used to do. So I got in the band and I was with them for about 18 months. And then I joined another band called City Lights, and it was much of the same thing. And, we were getting a bit older there, and we were kind of around about 18, and we became very proficient. Mm-hmm. Every week we'd get together and we'd learn 2 or 3 new tunes that had gone in the top 40, and we play them that weekend. And we'd do 2 spots. You didn't call them sets. It was spots. And the first set, you'd have your full outfit on, the Star Wars blow-dried hair, the waistcoats, the suit, the big fat kipper ties. And then in the second spot, you'd take the jacket off and just have the waistcoat on, and you'd start playing something a bit, and then you'd get up and dance, and that's how it was. And it was great. And we were about 17, 18. And then we did that, and we were on good money as well. But you kind of going, okay, so where does this go?
Right.
You can do that for as long as you can put up with it. But then we started seeing guys our age on telly, bands like Echo and the Bunnymen,
Yeah.
and Teardrop Explodes, and Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, and all these guys. And it's like, whoa, what's going on, man? They're writing their own songs, and they suck. So we could do better than that. So that's when that's when all the blow-dried hair got ditched. We were all wearing flares in those days. We all got black jeans and pointy suede boots, and basically started trying to look as much like Johnny Thunders as you possibly could. And on from there.
Yeah, that's where your nickname came from, right? From the pointy boots.
Well, that came from we had a monitor engineer in the 80s, Jeff Horn, his name was, and in the song, an early Icicle Works song called Hollow Horse goes, "You liken it to walking on hot coals, I'll keep my boots on." And obviously he heard this song every night. And my de rigueur, I would not wear anything except black jeans and Beatle boots, or anything that was like a derivative of Beatle boots. I mean, I had to be careful because I'm tall. If the heels were too high, I'd just go over,
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what I wore that get up for a long time. So, and there's photographs of me in Waikiki with a pair of shorts on and a pair of Beatle boots, because that's the only footwear that I would even consider, Wouldn't dream of wearing sneakers or a t-shirt. I had to have a Paisley t-shirt as well,
Right.
It's weird, isn't it? Some of the tech you have. I'm past all that now. Don't give a shit what it was.
I'm curious, are those the same as Cuban heels? Those boots?
Cuban heels, the Beatle boots, they basically were the heel, it doesn't go down like that. It's like a cowboy heel.
Yeah.
It kind of, it's called Italian, Italian shoe boots.
So that's
anyway, so that caught on, because he'd always go, "Oh, here's Boots," and then all of a sudden everybody was calling me Boots. And like whenever a nickname is born, you're never too sure whether or not you're happy with it, because if you let it go, it's going to be with you forever.
Yeah.
So I think there was maybe a couple of instances where I kind of queried it a bit, and I thought, well, as a nickname, Boots that's pretty cool. And I didn't know anybody else that was called it, apart from, well, there was somebody, I can't remember who.
Yeah, Boots Randolph. Boots Randolph. You remember?
That's right, yeah. And then one day, in about, it must have been like the mid-90s, early 90s, I carried on doing this. So I wore these things right from being the age of 20, 21 till I was about 31, 32. Yeah. And I was walking down the street in Liverpool, and you won't have heard of this guy, but there was this guy. It was a very popular show, but the guy in it wasn't cool, and he used to wear these cowboy boots. Mm-hmm. And his name was Jimmy Nail, was the actor. And I was walking down the street in Liverpool with my regulation boots on, and there was some young girl walking up the other way, and she went, "Jimmy Nail!" So I stopped wearing them, and that was it.
Well, he had a song called
Crocodile Shoes.
Yeah, but didn't he have one called Cowboy? Something with a cowboy.
Cowboy Dreams. Paddy McAloon wrote with him.
Yes, Cowboy Dreams.
Good songs, actually, because Jimmy Nail's from the Northeast, same as Paddy.
Right. That's it.
So there we go. That's the story of the boots.
The boots is the story. Well, now Chris Sharrock was also in the cabaret with you too.
Yeah.
So did the two of you say it's time for us to try something different?
Well, it's kind of what happened was I was with my band and he was in Young World with me, and I left them and joined City Lights, and he stayed with them. And then he kind of got into playing with bands in town. You know, we were doing original material.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a band called the Cherry Boys. They're like a power trio. It was very much influenced by the Jam.
Okay.
And they were really good, you know. And I was like, oh, okay. And then when I came up with the idea of doing a band where basically, okay, here's the pitch. Firstly, we're not doing any cover versions, so you're not going to make any money. We're going to do original material. You don't write songs, but I do. We've got a long road ahead of us. You go into places and you play to 5 people, and some of them can be hostile. And we're going to be playing in places that stink of urine, you know, and it's going to, you know, hey, are you up for it? You know, that's what the pitch is.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're going to have to find.
Let me ask you real quick. Speaking of that, did you play any supper clubs where there's a few people out there and they're eating, they're busy eating. So while the band is playing, they're like, can you turn it down? We're trying to eat.
Have I done that? I've done loads of them. And not so far back in time as you might think either. I've done some when I was playing original material and it happened, you know. Yeah. And you're just in the middle of your soliloquy and you can hear somebody, you know, just dipping the bread in the gravy and I've done all that. Yeah, it was horrendous, some of it. Yeah. But what you basically, but at least we got paid for those gigs.
Yeah.
Whereas now, you know, it wasn't quite into the realms of as it can be these days with like pay to play and stuff like that. Right. But you know, it's like you're gonna have to find the money to hire a rehearsal room. You know, you got to. It's all up front. It's starting up money, isn't it? Yeah. And it's going to take a long time, and that's your pitch when you start a new band, unless somebody knows somebody, you know, unless your manager is already managing somebody that's hot, or you've got a way in, and we didn't have a way in, you know. So he came over and we were into we were very much into Bebop Deluxe and then we were getting into stuff like Human League, Soft Cell, Ultravox with John Fox, Bunny Men, those guys are mentioned, and you know we were into the New York punk thing, and also in Liverpool bands like the Velvet Underground and the Doors and Buffalo Springfield and the Byrds, they were all very popular in Liverpool.
Right. I was going to mention the Byrds, with your guitar.
Yeah. You know, you'd go around the secondhand record stores and you'd just see all these, you know, Byrds, Buffalo Springfield and all of that kind of stuff. It wasn't, and also progressive rock was big in Liverpool. Yeah. The stuff that wasn't particularly big was, the Beatles, the Stones, the Who were never that big in Liverpool, and you know, Led Zeppelin, stuff like that. No, we were never a blues town, you know. Yeah. Surprisingly enough, we were jangle pop, you know. We had that tradition, you know. I mean, Liverpool is the city in the UK that's produced more #1 artists than any other city, you know, in the world. Yeah, true. So there's a lot of talent, you know. There's a lot of talent there. I could see. I think, you know, coming from that area too, Liverpool and Manchester. I love a lot of bands from both cities, you know, north of England like that. Yeah. You know? I mean, I think it's something about that area, you know. Maybe there wasn't a lot else to do, you know. Maybe, you know. And well, I mean, you know, that's sort of thrown up as as a possible, you know, reason why. Yeah. I honestly don't know why it is. I mean, But, you know, you could say that about everywhere in the UK, you know, I mean,
True.
but I think with Liverpool, there always seemed to be, somebody always had a song on the go, you know. It's like if you go round to people's houses for birthdays or Christmas, everybody would do a song.
Mhm.
You know, I've seen Paul McCartney talk about this. We're like, you know, so every, you know, I mean, the McCartneys lived in a council house, which
Yeah.
means basically the house is provided free of charge.
Yeah.
And they had a piano. You know, they had a piano, and I've been into the house, and they got a little upright piano. And he said every house you'd go into, even though they didn't have a pot to piss in, they'd have a fucking piano in the corner.
Right.
And you know, Grandad would sit down and go, "Oh, you know, join it now." Oh, you know, and they could all play stride piano, and
Right.
you know, it's hilarious to me that.
Yeah.
So I noticed that definitely when I was growing up, that everybody had a song, somebody that you'd never thought had a musical bone in them. Once they had a couple of drinks, man, they could, you know, they were off. Carousel, you know, and they call the wind Mariah, you know, paint you wagon, all of that stuff.
I only sound good in the shower. I don't know why. You know, well, talk about how you met Chris Layhe.
Well, I put it. Me and Chris Sharrock were going to do a band, and then I put an advert in I think I put it in the local paper, and I always remember for some reason I wasn't home when he came round. And my dad was in, and he said, "Oh, some guy came round," and you know, and you got to remember in those days, it was like pre-mobile phones, and you know, if you made an appointment to do something with somebody, you had to stick to it, you know.
Right.
And you know, all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, he came round, and my dad said he's been round, and I said, "What's he like?" He went, "Oh, he seemed like a nice lad." I said, "What's he look like?" He goes, well, he looks, he's got a big nose, so he looked like that fella out the Who, you know. And I went, "Oh, really? Okay." Anyway, he didn't look anything like that. But so we got together, and I think he was the only guy that applied, you know.
Okay.
I mean, there was no sort of great premeditated, what I need is this, or, you know, I want somebody that looks like this and somebody that's into this and the blah, blah, blah. There wasn't any of that. It was just like somebody showed up. Yeah, you're in. You could play
Yeah.
pretty good, you know.
What was
And that
he
was
into?
it.
What was he into? What were the two Chris's? Hey, let me ask you this first. Did you ever think about the name of the band being Ian and the two Chris's?
No. But that's what everybody used to call us of yours.
Okay, I had to throw that out there.
No, it's not quite Crosby, Stills and Nash, is it?
Right. No, but anyway, what influences did they
Well,
bring?
he was, you know, I mean, we liked a lot of the same things.
Mhm.
I always, you know, my taste is just so eclectic, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot easier to discuss what I don't like than what I do like, you know, because the only thing that I've never really enjoyed is rap, because it's just not musical enough for me. And but I do like a couple of rap records.
Yeah, I agree.
But he was kind of into, at the time, I remember he was very much into the likes of Simple Minds, Aztec Camera, which I was into. Not so much Simple Minds. Big Country. He was a big U2 fan. You know, it was all going off, and there was, honest to God, there was so much music around. You know, as I know that you will know, but maybe some of your viewers won't. It was, and every night there was a gig in town, you know. I mean, first of all, I don't know how we afforded it. But once again, back in those days, gigs were cheap. So that you'd go and watch the artist and they'd build up a following. And eventually they'd put a record out. And then you'd go and buy the record in a chart shop. And they'd get in the charts and they'd be on TV and on the radio and all of that. It was a very clear-cut path, the way up, you know. Every night, you know, and I do mean every night. There wasn't like a slow Monday. You know, there'd be like gigs on everywhere, and it was cheap to get in, and the beer was cheap,
Mhm.
and you know, you could get on the bus. It was all a lot easier to do. As soon as you go out the door now in this world, everything's expensive.
Yeah. Yep.
Everything. And you know, don't start me on concert tickets.
Right.
I mean, it really is becoming like you've got to be middle class to enjoy live music, you know.
Right. And like you said, it's almost impossible for UK artists to tour over here in the States. I mean, you gotta, I mean, have some kind of bankroll to be able to
Well,
open.
I've been offered a few things over there, and it's like,
Yeah.
by the time you know, I'm not going to suffer for my art, you know.
Yeah.
By the time you've done all the sums and worked it out, and all the effort over reward,
Right.
it's kind of like, well, do you know what? If you know, the withholding tax, a visa for one British artist to come over to the States is usually up around $3,500, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas American artists can come over here for nothing.
Yep. Right. Right.
And it's something that we're trying to sort out, you know. And also, you know, because America's so big, I mean, American artists can come over here for nothing. Nothing is more than a 6-hour drive away over here.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas over your side, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all close. Yeah. You're
Yeah.
right. We'll talk about all but one of your albums was released on Beggar's Banquet. Were you happy with your relationship with the label?
We were happy with the relationship. We were very disappointed that that we didn't, you know, we started out big, you know. I mean, it was just insane. One minute we were, you know, we were playing to, you know, 15 people in a club somewhere. And the next, you know, we were in Sausalito getting picked up in a limo, and we were opening for the Pretenders at the Universal Amphitheatre. And, you know, I mean, it really was you know, the movie stuff. It was like, wow, you know, we're rock stars, even though we haven't sold a fucking record, you know.
Uh-huh.
And then we started doing okay. We worked hard. We probably could have done a lot more. But one of the problems that we had was that Beggar's Banquet, which is the UK label we were with, there was like, because it was like the second English invasion, you know, because British music was really hot in the early 80s in America. It was all happening again.
Right.
And you could write your own ticket, you know, every major label wanted a British band. And we actually had an offer from Tom Petty's label that was affiliated to MCA, which probably would have been a great idea for us to go with. But Clive Davis at Arista offered Beggar's Banquet a lot more money. So they took the money, you know, instead of thinking about further down the line. And what happened was Arista threw a fortune at Birds Fly, Whisper to a Scream. Whisper to a Scream, Birds Fly. There it is. That's the original pressing.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
I wasn't going to show that yet. You saw me put it down.
Yeah. Oh man, you know, I should have been a cop.
I was listening to you. I was listening to you. Okay, go ahead.
And so basically, you know, the first album came out in America, and they only went with one single.
Yeah.
And then they dropped it. They dropped the album, and then we went off to do the second album, and they didn't like the second album at all. They didn't even release it. So we were always very frustrated that we went big. Icicle Works were a hit band with the first album, and then we basically had to start again. Yeah. So like the second album, Small Price of a Bicycle, third album, Defeat Your Enemy, fourth album, Blind. We built it up again by touring constantly, road work. We worked, so we never stopped. It was ridiculous.
I wanted to go back to that, to the, this was the first single I ever got. Uh,
Oh wow, it's a 12-inch, yeah.
yeah. And if
That's
you could,
pretty. That's a pretty nice package. That
yes, yes, it
I
is.
like the logo,
Yeah, I
and
do too.
yeah, that was that was like the first cut is the deepest, and all the good stuff, all my great memories of Icicle Works come from that period. You know.
And I don't know if you can see the picture, but I've always liked that picture there too, of you guys. There it is.
Yeah, well, you know what that is? That's something I pass quite frequently when I'm going off to do gigs in Yorkshire. It's a dam,
Okay.
and if they get the water just when it's just trickling down, so we had to go down this big hill and stand at the bottom of this enormous dam, just to get that shot.
Is that right?
Yes, no, it's before you could do anything CGI or anything, you know.
Yeah.
And the front is it's all colorized.
Yes, it's very iconic. Well, the
Yeah.
I think that song though, "Love Is a Wonderful Color," has one of the most gorgeous soaring choruses I've ever heard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that was written. The first one we did was a single called Nirvana, which was kind of like a droney type thing with a lot of drums. And then we did Birds Fly. And then we did Love Is a Wonderful Color, and Love Is a Wonderful Color was the one that broke in the UK and Europe. I mean, Birds Fly didn't really do anything over here,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
And
know,
that
which was
sounds,
odd. And then I
yeah.
think they re-released it when it did okay over your side,
Yeah.
but it didn't really do anything. So we were, we were always frustrated that.
Well, here's the, speaking of bird fly, here's a closer picture, a bigger picture.
Yeah,
Same
that's
one.
on Situation 2.
Yes, it is.
That's through. Well, basically, what happened with that was the Beggars Banquet said, "Well, we'll pay for you to record a single, with a proper producer, Hugh Jones, who was wonderful, in a proper studio, make it absolutely killer." And if it was a great idea actually what they had, and if it does something, we reserve the option to sign you to a proper album deal.
Yeah.
And so it came out, and it got a lot of airplay. It wasn't a hit. I think it got to #2 in the independent chart, but it did its job.
Right.
And then because of what happened in America, because that's the first thing a UK record company will do is play it to overseas territories and see how they react to it. And as soon as the Americans heard Birds Fly, they were like, "Oh, this is great, man. Yeah, we want this." So then they signed us to a full 5 album deal.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said that Birds Fly wasn't big over there. I just talked to Ian Gong,
Oh yeah,
and the song "Hold On," right?
yeah.
Yeah, I've always loved that song. And he told me the same thing. He said it didn't do anything over there, and it was big here on college radio, and
Well,
it never really,
that was the really cool thing, the college radio in the States, and they were kind of building the infrastructure of all of this. This was, and REM, were the pioneers. They kind of showed us the way to do it.
right,
Going through every college town, doing every fanzine, interviews, and you'd pull up to some of these college radio stations, and it was hilarious. The guys that were there, just pure stoners, and yeah, I mean, you've never seen anything like it, smoking weed on the radio, and "Hey, you guys want beer, man?" "Hey, fucking Dale, did he swear?" And but we did all of that, and it was great, But there was a lot more to do over there, because America's so big. You've got so much more opportunity to promote yourself. The trouble is, it's so big that it takes an enormous amount of time to make anything resembling a unified dent where you can get some traction. Here we are, And
and
I
the
was
love.
always very disappointed that after all that work we did, I felt that the ball was dropped, and I didn't think that it was me that dropped the ball. I mean, the song that I wrote, the first song that we were coming back with after the first album, was a song called Hollow Horse,
Right.
which I thought was great, you know, and it had all of the ingredients that the first album had, a bit straighter, and it had the jangly guitar, and you know, we were like, wow, we've done it, we've done it, and it did nothing here. And it didn't even get released in the States. So what do you do then? And I wasn't wrong about this, because I still play that song in my sets and when we drag Icicle Works out. And you'd think we were playing, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody. It's such as the reverence for that song, you know. Well, I've got the T-shirt on.
I was going to ask you. Okay, there we go. Yes, we'll be as
and
we
the
are.
will be as we, you know, they sing the verses. It's like being in fucking Bon Jovi. And I'm like, I was right about this song.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when we were doing the second album, obviously the single Hollow Horse had tanked. And we went to, they didn't scrimp on that either. They sent us to the south of France, a place called Miraval, with an American producer, a guy called Wally Brill. It was costing a lot of money, so they still believed in us. And Hollow Horse had tanked, hadn't done anything, but they still believed in us. You know, like I say, I won't say anything disrespectful about Beggars Banquet, because they did stick with us. You know, nowadays, if you don't get your first album away, you're gone, you know.
Right.
And we were in the south of France for fucking hell, 6 weeks.
Right.
And then when we kind of pretty much got the album finished, and then I said to the Wally Brill, the producer, New York guy, I said to him, but we got to put Hollow Horse first, you know.
Yeah.
And he was like, Hollow Horse? What's that? And I went, you know, that's the single that he went, well, I don't know anything about this. I said, yeah, well, that's because we've already done it. And he goes, no, I'm making a record here with you guys now. This is our record. So we got into it. He didn't even want to put it on the album. And I went, it's fucking track one, dude.
Yeah.
So we had a massive bust up. And I went, you know, it's the first single. And he went, don't you mean it's the first failed single?
Oh, did he say that?
And I was like, bye.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I think it's unfortunate that in a way that early on you guys were relegated as one-hit wonders, you know.
Yeah.
Because there's so many other songs. I wanted to mention a few that I really enjoy. Out of Season. I love your guitar in that one.
Thanks. Well, that's another one that I still play, you know.
Yeah.
And
Good.
it's kind of, but you know, the thing about that first album, it's like the same, any artist will tell you this. Your first album is always the set that you've been playing since you started. You played it every night, it's refined, right. And you've had the opportunity to ditch a bunch of other songs because you can only have 10 and it's 40 minutes and all of that. So that was a pretty strong collection of songs.
Yeah, and that's why they call it a sophomore slump. It's always hard to come back, especially when you're on a time constraint and put out your second album.
Yeah,
and make it as solid as one that you, like you said, you've had maybe years to put together, you know, for your first album, and then to have to do that again. You know?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few bands suffered with the difficult second album syndrome, and I mean, we had the songs. We had good songs, but it's I don't know. I just feel that sometimes you're standing in his light, you know, and sometimes you're not. And it just all felt good with that first album. And I mean, I'm quite prolific anyway, as long as I don't try and write songs.
Right.
Like if you say to me, hey, Ian, we need we want you to do a session. We're going to record it on Friday. We want you to do a brand new song that nobody else, that hasn't been heard, and it's fresh. I'll fly into a panic,
Yeah.
because I don't work that way. You always have to wait for the time we'll choose you, and you go, oh yeah, okay. And then you run to the guitar and you can't wait to get it out, Whereas if you sit down with a guitar or a piano or whatever, a computer, oh God, it's miserable, It's like you just know it ain't gonna happen. And if it does happen, it won't be very good.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was going to ask you too. When does the inspiration strike most to you? Is there a certain time of day?
There's no rule.
There's no rule. Yeah.
There's no rule. It's usually when you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
When you're buzzing, if you feel healthy and sprightly, that's when it. But I mean, it just comes from anywhere. I usually get it from a coin of phrase, And one thing I do is whenever I get a good title, I make a note of it. Right. So that when I come up with a riff or a chord sequence or a melody, I go into my little file and there's all these really interesting titles. Because I always find that the first thing that's got to be good is the title, because that's the first thing that draws them in.
Right.
If I go to you, oh, here's my new song, it goes, I saw her, you're going to go. Whereas if I go, well, I've got a new song and it's called Interplanetary Vehicle has landed in Port Sunlight, you go, really? And yes, that's a new title from a new song off the new album. And I know that, and I've already, if I put it up on Facebook, people go, oh, what's that like? And that's part of it. That's like your marquee banner,
Yeah, yeah. Well, another track from your earlier days, High Time. I like the electric version, but I prefer the acoustic, I think.
Everybody says that.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And then another track, When It All Comes Down. Another gorgeous chorus. Love is all that matters when it all comes down. What a message,
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
That was that. I mean, that's that's still in the set.
Yeah.
Very melodic, good lyric. I was talking to one of the long-term fans the other day, this lady, and she goes to see, the audience, because they're of a certain age, they go through a period whereby they didn't go to so many gigs and they weren't on the scene because they had young children and all of that. And then when the kids kind of blow the coop and they have the second life, don't they? When they're like in their 50s and 60s. And she was saying to me, your lyrics are really great. It's so important because you're paying attention. And then you hear like the stuff that gets in the charts, stuff that's around now. It's like the lyrics are just they're all about unrequited love,
Yeah, very true.
Or something similar.
Yeah.
And it's, we can't really relate to that, not because our love is requited. But I remember I was doing an album with, Danny Thompson, the upright bass player. He worked with Nick Drake and John Martin and all that. And I was doing a record with him called A Party Political Broadcast on Behalf of the Emotional Party. And I was playing in the songs. And, we have a slang in the UK for girls or women, call them birds,
Yeah.
And so I'm playing these songs and Danny he's sitting there, he's so funny, Danny Thompson. Real East Ender, from the East End of London. And he's like, Ian, can I ask you something? and I'm like, yeah. He goes, you still care about birds? Because I don't. And it's like, because it's like when you're kind of younger, it's like, oh, my heart. Now it's just gone,
Yeah.
and I need to I mean, I will write the odd love song, but I mean, that's kind of like a default thing that always happens. I mean, what's on here on Nabby Road? Sausalito is an instrumental about what I was talking about when we first went to the States. Holy's about the power of positive thinking and music. Steal Away is about getting out of town because they're gonna fucking have us all chained up soon. The Sun Came Out at Night is memories of a relationship I had many years ago. Is she still around? Film Noir Star is about me imagining what it must be like to be Sterling Hayden or Richard Widmark or Peter Lorre. Amazing is about space exploration. Love Bombing is like my attempt at doing like a Wings track. Guest List is about trying to get on the fucking guest list to gigs, all the people who hassle me. Gentleman Dressed for Dinner is about putting on a tie when you go for something to eat with a gal. Start Again is about pressing on with life after my mother's passing. But it's not 10 songs about why doesn't she love me? And so I've been quite good with that. So it's like what you were saying about When It All Comes Down. That's a pretty good lyric for a.
Yeah.
It was like 22 when I wrote that.
Well, I'll tell you another song that I like, your socially conscious, aware track too, like Blind.
Right, yeah.
Hard-hitting lyrics, forcing us to, look at ourselves and what happens when we turn a blind eye, to society.
I mean, you can always take a bit of stick when you start getting into writing about things like that. But it's all fair game to me. There's nothing I won't write about.
Well, it's still relevant today. I mean,
yeah,
that kind of a song. And I like the gospel sound on it
yeah,
too.
yeah.
It really works. And let me see if you can guess what my my favorite Icicle Works song is. And it's from this earlier period that I'm speaking of. Can you guess what my favorite?
Is it from the first album?
No.
It's probably a B-side or something, is it?
It was on the best of.
But it wasn't. Okay, it's.
I haven't mentioned it yet.
Do you know what? You're gonna have to tell me.
Okay, Little Girl Lost.
Yeah, well, that's another song that gets played.
Yeah.
I was chuffed with that because we'll put a 12-string over a reggae 4 on the floor. But it's got a great chorus. I mean, I played it where are we, Sunday?
Yeah.
I was playing it in a place called Mexborough on Friday, and you just start playing it, and you used to have to wait till the second chorus for everybody to sing along.
Yeah.
But now, because everybody knows they've got a lot less time, they're usually in by the first one.
By the first, no, but that one, I mean, all the elements work in that track, I think. I like the reggae backbeat on that one.
Well, that was. It's not actually reggae, but it's a 4. But I got that from Joker Man down in a Nightingale Dang.
Okay, I can hear that.
Stuart Copeland. It's white reggae.
Yes.
Stuart Copeland used to do it.
Yes, I can hear that. Yeah, and Lay Lady Lay. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
There we go.
Same chords.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But another soaring chorus on that one, and it's the kind of songs that give you goosebumps. Little Girl Lost is one of them.
Well, I've always tried to write good choruses.
Yeah.
You can't make every song a big sing along, but
right.
But I've found if you go and see a band or an artist, and they've got all the lights and it's all loud and it's busy and everyone's rocking, and we get like 3 or 4 songs into the set and the audience hasn't sung along yet, I think there's something wrong.
Yeah.
You got to be able to go. There's that moment. Here's the chorus.
Yeah.
You got to have a bunch of them. That's why bands who write big choruses, and also the other trick lots of oh, oh, you know, if you haven't got a big chorus, you got to make sure you're gonna oh. I mean, Ozzy Osbourne even puts them where they aren't, you know, because you know, Ozzy, Black Sabbath aren't a band you can sing along with,
Right.
so he started singing along with the riffs.
Yeah.
So like
yeah.
at the end of War Pigs, you know, he's going, oh, come on, Cody.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. You're right.
And I was there going, whoa!
How funny. How funny. Yeah, some of his clips on YouTube. Yeah, that's quite takes me back. Well,
Yeah.
you also worked with fellow Liverpudlian Ian Broody on
Yeah.
the Lightning Seeds album.
Yeah, I've done a few things with Ian. We originally produced his, well, I didn't produce them, but I kind of helped him do the vocals because Ian's not really a singer. He'd be the first person to admit that, you know. So when he first started out, he says, will you come in and help me get the vocals right? So we did that. And then he asked me to write some lyrics. Me and Terry Hall, he's the late great Terry Hall. He did stuff with him, and I did some backing vocals. Yeah, that was quite a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, talk about how was touring as part of the Waterboys with Mike Scott. How was that?
Well, I really enjoyed it because I mean, obviously, I'm a fan of the music. We had a few arguments because, you know, well, it is quite an adjustment to be a front man playing in somebody else's band.
Yeah.
I mean, but I was playing bass and I loved it because, you know, the first thing is you're absolved of all worry, you know, because it's not your band.
There you go. Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm not turning up to the venue going, how many tickets have we sold and what's happening here and blah blah blah. You know, I just turn up and I'm like, hey, great, what time we on? What time we eating? You know. The thing that took a little bit more getting used to was like being on stage and you're standing there playing and like everybody's looking that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking at the other guy. That takes a bit of getting used to, but it was great. You know, I wasn't really doing a great deal at the time, and you know, we went around Europe and the UK, and we went to Japan. I played with Mike Scott as a solo artist and in the Waterboys, and he had me playing bass and piano, so I was out in my comfort zone. So I was learning,
yeah,
you know, picking up things along the way. So that was really good. No, I really enjoyed it, you know.
Yeah, that's someone I'd like to have an interview with. What solo albums are you most proud of? Would you say? Are we?
Yeah, well, I did a list the other day for some reason. I don't know why. I think it was because I insist that Utopian is my 20th studio album, including the Icicle Works, because that's why I wanted to do a double vinyl album with 20 tracks on. And a couple of people queried it. So I went back and it's actually, I think I've done about 20, 25, 26 albums. It's not 15.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, as I'm looking at them and then I'm putting the date next to them to see when it was, and it opens up the memories of the times of what was going on and that. And it's a hell of a thing to try and you know, when am I going to sit down and listen to them all and decide which one's the best? You know, I just remember, and sometimes I'll play an album. I mean, when I'm doing a new album, honest to God, you have to listen to the songs and play it so many times, and it's just, it would drive anybody insane the amount of times that we have to listen to these tracks when we're mixing them and editing them and, you know, messing with them. And It's just, I don't even know how many times we must listen. So when it finally gets in the box, I don't listen to them again. But the other day, because I just got a car that hasn't got Bluetooth in it, so I had to grab it, but it plays CDs. So I was just walking out the door, and I saw that, which is that's the reissue of Star Smile Strong.
Okay.
Star Smile Strong, which came out in 2017.
Okay.
And I hadn't really, focused on really trying to do a great record for a while. It had been a bit bitty because my head was kind of in other places. So I really wanted to do a great one, and it was the opportunity I had to do it with the touring band that I've had for the past 20 years. So I made sure I had, 15, 16, 17 tunes, so I could whittle them down to 11, 10, 11 or 12. So, anything that isn't great goes. And that's what happened. And the production's really good on it. And I think that's probably my favorite, because it's like what Steven Spielberg says, it's like, he can't watch Jaws, he just sees a fucking rubber shark.
Okay, right.
He doesn't think about the wonderful interplay between Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss and Roy Scheider and the way he framed that. He just goes, rubber fucking shark. And that's it. And if an artist listens to their music years down the line, I just remember what kind of niggled me about it at the time. But you don't ever stop making an album. You just walk away from it, because otherwise you just never release them,
Right. I was going to ask you about that. So you just kind of put it to bed once you've done that. Are there any tracks that you feel were unfinished that you'd like to revisit and try to finish?
No, I can think of tracks that shouldn't have been fucking released because they were shite,
Okay.
But for some reason at the time, I thought, usually what happens there is and we've actually got that situation with this new album now that we're finishing up now, which is called New Brighton Rock.
Okay.
New Brighton is like a stretch expanse of sand. It's a beach opposite the other side of the Mersey, the River Mersey estuary, where we all used to go as kids because it was like a beach. And it still is a beach, but it's the River Mersey, so it's not fucking Venice, Venice, LA. It's scruffy. But the album's called New Brighton Rock, and it's kind of with the last album, Nabby Road, which kind of was a little bit of an homage to my mum who died and a couple of other friends of mine who passed away. It had that kind of feel to it. I thought, well, I'm done with that now. But it goes quite deep, this album, this new one, and it's a little bit dark in a couple of places. So, after when we're on side 2, I'm like, we need something a bit cheerful, So I've got a load of songs that would be suitable for it, but we've ended up with this track, and I'm still debating it in my mind today, in fact. And it's called Going Back to Bed. And it's the last track on the album. And, usually you try and end on a sort of something that philosophical, that raises a few questions to finish your album off. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I think it's good to finish off with a bit of a joke,
Right.
Because it's like you can't be serious all the time.
Right.
And so there's been a few tracks over the years that I thought were funny, which is why they were included on the albums. And now I don't think they're funny.
Yeah.
And something that isn't funny doesn't work, because the only reason it's there is because it's funny. Right. And if it ain't funny, it's shit.
Isn't that, speaking of funny, isn't that funny about time? How time changes your perception. For me, a lot of music that when I was younger, I thought was shite, Now I go back and listen to it or years later and I appreciate it. So it's probably a maturing of your senses and your appreciation
Well,
for
it is that, but also, of course, it is that. And you know, you're not the same person that you were 5 years ago, or even 5 minutes ago. You know, and I found that a lot of music that you didn't really get at one point. In fact, you know what? I was never a big Smiths fan.
yeah,
And I was listening to a compilation of the BBC sessions called Hatful of Hollow this morning.
yeah,
I was just out having a coffee somewhere, sitting watching the waves. And I went, wow, man, this is great, you know.
yeah,
And it's like, I never liked the Smiths,
yeah.
but a lot of it was to do with the fact that everybody was telling me how great they were. And it was in all the papers, and they were getting more successful than the Icicle Works. And I was a bit jealous. And you know, all of this coming at you. And then you just put it on and listen to it. And I went, that's really terrific. I really like that.
Yeah.
And the music is made at a certain point in time. But one thing I've noticed is that whatever's going on around the music affects the way the music sounds.
Yeah,
And that's to do with what's in your head and what's going on in the world, you know.
very true.
And I, you know, for a long time, I couldn't listen to a lot of 80s stuff because it's got that kind of digital production, the big snare drums, and it's very spiky, and we didn't use tape much, we used digital. And I wouldn't listen to my records, you know. And then one day I put something on and I went, this sounds great.
Yeah, yeah,
And you know, because you got bands like the Killers trying to emulate that sound, you know, and that band Future Islands, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of bands and they're all trying to sound like they're from the 80s. So it's cool to sound like that, you know.
yeah, exactly
And
right.
that fucking dry, sort of compressed Tom Petty, Rick Rubin sound that you've been chasing for the past fucking 20 years, because that's what everybody loves.
Yeah,
All of a sudden you don't like that anymore. It's like
yeah, right.
drum machines. Oh man, I can't do an album with a drum machine on. I have to replace it with a real drummer. It sounds great, you know. For some reason today, that drum machine sounds kick ass, you know. So, and that I love that about music. But it's the same with all art, isn't it?
Yes, it
It's the
is.
same with books and movies.
Right,
And you know, sometimes you think, oh, I can't watch that film again. I hated that film. And
right.
then it would come on at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, you've had a beer, and you think,
Uh,
fuck it, put it on, and you go, it
yeah,
doesn't
you
make any sense. I do think, obviously, that music is the greatest art form.
yeah,
And I think part of it comes from, I mean, if you read a great book or read a great watch a great movie
yeah,
or see great art or whatever, which is all subjective, it's kind of like that's what it is. And with a movie or a book, you know, you have favorite scenes, but basically it's the whole thing that you're there to enjoy.
right.
Whereas, you know, with pop music, you know, if there's some artists that were just terrible at making albums, you know, but they made fantastic 45s, you know.
Right.
And you know, that's why I love all those like Nuggets compilations and stuff. Some bands that couldn't even get it together to
Right.
record more than one track, you know, because they were so insane. You know, but the one track they recorded was fucking, you know, pushing
Yeah.
too hard, or I had
Right.
too much to dream last night, or you know, or something like that, or you know.
I'll tell you.
And so you can take with pop music, you can take like a slice of it,
Mhm.
and then and that, I mean, to me, the whole. Do you remember this guy? What was his fucking name? I used to follow his blog. This fucking guy, and he just got too much for me. And he was like, "Hey, we might as well. The album's finished. Nobody wants to hear a fucking album." David, somebody it was,
Yeah.
and I unfollowed him. And he was going like, "Nobody wants to hear a record. They just want." I'm just like, do you know what? The whole idea of a 40-minute
Mhm.
LP, and that's where you should start. when CDs came out, too many of us were seduced into putting too many tracks on because we could.
Right.
And basically, the best way that you can experience music is in a 20-minute side.
Right.
And then you turn it over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing is that you always try and make sure that there isn't a skip track, because man, that means you got to get up and skip the track, you know.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I do think, I wish I could remember this guy's name. The compiling and construction of a running order is as important as the music itself.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You know, and I think on albums, talking about LPs, the thing that you miss with CDs is the segue. You know, if one song fades into another, if on a CD track, it cuts off, you know, abruptly. You know,
Yeah.
On the album, you get to listen to it all. That's one thing that I do appreciate more about vinyl is that, you know, but then also you get, well, some people say the sound quality. I don't know, if it's really any better, but yeah, you know, talking about.
Well, talk about the sound quality. I mean, I have to deal with questions like this a lot.
Yeah.
It's like you've got all these guys who are like basically clueless, who are going, "Oh, the vinyl's warmer," and I'm like, "Listen, I'm a practitioner. It's not warmer. You just think it is. Okay, what kind of turntable have you got? What amplifier have you got? What cartridge have you got? Are you using a preamp? What are you using? I'll tell you why it sounds like that. Okay. Oh no, it's just such a sweet sound. I'm like, dude, you're making it like that. And vinyl is a loss format. If you haven't got the top end system, forget it. Whereas if you're on a budget, you've got a really well mastered CD with an entry level CD player. You don't need any kind of fucking bullshit before you go into the amp. Plug it straight in, budget shit. It'll sound a lot better than the turntable will through that.
Right.
I have this conversation regularly, you know. And the other thing is, you know, because I'm a big Neil Young fan, and he's a pain in the fucking arse with his fucking, you know, attention to detail, man. The fucking, you know, it's like the bit rate you these days when you put a record on, you're only getting like 5% of the audio quality. It's fuck off. First of all, you've been deaf since 1971, so you wouldn't have a fucking clue anyway, right? Secondly, it's like when all this music that we know and love now, you know, like when cassettes came out in the early 70s, you'd go round to your friend's house and you'd record the album they just bought on a cassette. And you'd take it home with you, or they'd lend you the album. And you'd listen to that 100 times and love it, you know. And it was a shitty cassette. Probably played back in mono through a little deck yard that was, you know, and you loved it. So don't tell me that the sound quality is important. It isn't. What's important is the fucking song and the performance.
Right. I have to agree with you there. I used to make those mixtapes. So, you know.
Oh God, I miss it.
Yeah, I know.
Somebody sent me a photograph the other day of a mixtape I made for them like 25 years ago. And the first thing that blew my mind was that I could write with my hand on the, because I mean, when do you write now? You just do that all the time, don't you?
You don't.
So I'd written it out and it was all meticulous and doubled up writing as well. I can't do that anymore. I can't even hold a pen, you know.
Right.
And it was like, and I must have timed that.
Right.
So that, you know, that thing of like, you go, and it wasn't digital. So you had to guess how much tape was left on the underside too.
That's right.
And so you'd have maybe 3 or 4 tunes that you knew were 2 minutes long. And you go, yes, I've just got it on there, you know. I always remember You Are My Friend by Spirit of Potato Land, 148. So I could just about get it. That was on the end of it.
You know, I got a lot of experience. I should have been in production. You know, I should have worked in some studios because a lot of hands-on just myself. my little stereo system, recording, and putting my mixtapes together. And I would listen. There was a rock and roll. It was called Rock and Roll Alternative on Sunday nights here, and that might have been where I heard you guys first. And I'd be sitting there ready for him to start playing, and he'd play a lot of import, a whole lot. About half of the stuff he played I liked. The other half I could, it's not worth it. But and sit there
Yeah.
and record it
Yeah.
And yeah, that kind of stuff.
But that was so much part of this love that we both have for this thing now that we still have. And it's like when you try and explain to somebody that you'd hear something on the radio, or you might see them on the TV, and you couldn't go online.
Yeah.
So what you do, so you have to wait for that week's music paper to come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they didn't have a website, so you'd wait until they were written about in the paper, or a poster went up round town with the name of this band on, and you didn't know anything about them. You didn't know where they were from, but you'd heard this track, so you'd go and see them, and then somebody would write about them in the music paper, and that's all you got to know about them. And then they might be interviewed on the radio, but it was when they decided, not you. So you were like always waiting for, it was like trying to crack a case, Whereas now, it's like, I could play you something now by somebody and set me stopwatch and say, okay, go. Yeah. And, within 2 minutes, you'd be able to tell me the name of the lead singer's mother's maiden name,
Right, because of the internet. Yeah, I know. It's
and,
made
and the internet has, it's given so much. I mean, guys like me would be really fucked without it. It's enabled us to not have to worry about having record deals or anything like that. We can go straight to our audience. That's been terrific. And also, in general, the computer, because it used to cost 50, 60,000 English pounds to make a half decent sounding record. You'd have to go in a studio and use tape and all of this. And now, I've got a little studio downstairs that I can do everything on.
Yeah.
Cost me nothing,
Right.
Well, it doesn't cost me nothing. It costs me a lot of thought and time, and the artwork and the manufacturing don't cost me nothing. They cost me plenty. Vinyl, wow. But yeah, I've forgotten what I'm waffling on about now.
That's all right. Well, it's a double-edged sword, is because then the other side of it has made us really lazy and really spoiled, And like you said, going back in the day when you kind of had to work for it, that's what you did. Well, I wanted to,
and when you got it,
yeah,
it was obviously that much more rewarding, if you can.
Right.
I mean, that whole thing of they can stream it or watch it on YouTube. It's like, it's immediate. It's instant. It's instant gratification, isn't it?
Right.
There's no build up to it. There's no foreplay, if you like. It's just like, there it is. And, you're kind of flippant about it because it's so easy to find. So you're not like, oh man, I can't believe oh man, let's enjoy this. Let's crank it up. You're just like, and what did they say? Most tracks on Spotify streaming, they play the first 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Before deciding to play something else.
Yeah. I did want to go back and mention on a few of the tracks, your solo tracks that were some of my favorites from Potency.
Oh yeah.
And I'd like to get your feedback. Living Proof. All Things.
Oh, well, okay. Do you want to do them one at a time? Living Proof, I wrote when I heard that the Go-Go's were getting back together.
Okay.
And I wrote that song, and I did a demo of it. I think we got it to them a bit late. Not that anything would have happened, even if we would have got it to them in time. But that just sort of, I wanted one of those real, Pacific Coast Highway windows down, Miracles can happen, you know, like a teen anthem. So that was living proof. Anyway, they didn't record it, so I did.
Yeah, yeah. And then All Things to Everyone is another. I like that one quite a bit.
Yeah, I like that one. That came about when I just heard somebody, you know, that was another turn of phrase. I think I was watching the TV or I was kind of half listening to the radio or something. And somebody said, oh yeah, the trouble with that is they just want to be all things to everyone. And I went, great title.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and then so that's how that came about.
That's how that one came out. And then Great Dreams of Heaven. Great
My
guitar
set opener.
licks on that one. Yeah.
And
I like
a
how
lot
your
of words to
voice-
remember.
Yeah, voice is treated.
Yeah,
treated.
well, it's meant to sound like he's on a walkie-talkie from a war zone.
Right, right.
That was the idea. There was a lot of lyrics to that, and I didn't play it for many years because, like I say, the lyrics are just, you know, got failing light and aching bones, got beds in subways, paper homes, got clear blue skies and rainy days, got sailors sailing, got mighty ships across the sea, got plenty of room for you and me, got babies being born, HIV, got programs failing, liberty and freedom, all the things that men require. Children singing, church bells ringing, object shops desire, football teams and crazy scenes from 1967, and we got great dreams of heaven. Got TV shows from satellite, got company on winter night, got excess and pills of purity light, got flags all waving, got sandy beaches everywhere, fuel injected cars to get us there, got pension plans and healthcare, got daylight savings, decency and honesty, the things that folk depend on. Introduction, a dirty joke, and then a song to end on. Countries die when rockets fly and cities have been leveled, and we got great dreams of heaven. Got ways of living, left or right, fast talking chat show sponsored by, got kids who'll steal for just a hit, politicians talking, got idols selling fizzy drink, got rappers stealing everything, so much going on, it's hard to think. Soap stars are singing. Verdant scenes and ways and means to understand our being. Holocaust, catastrophe, and beauty we are seeing. Harder times of holy wine and bread that is unleavened. And we got great dreams of heaven. Crazy leaders, self-assured, who sit atop their nation. Banners headed, peace and freedom, justice and damnation. Cold wind blowing, embers glowing, God knows where we're heading. And we got great dreams of heaven. and that's the first song every night.
See, that's something I've never had the dedication and the commitment. Discipline is the word. Discipline to be a musician. I tried to learn the piano starting out with one of those learn the piano by mail, VHS tapes, and I couldn't grasp it. I didn't have the discipline, but I don't think I would have the memory either. I don't think I would be able to remember the lyrics like that. It's, that's phenomenal to me that you, as many songs as you've written, that you.
Yeah, my guitar tech said to me once, "That's what gets me about you guys." And I went, "What?" He goes, "Remembering all the words."
Yeah.
How'd you do it? It's like, well, I don't know. It's sometimes you forget them. But how do these guys who are in plays remember stuff? I mean, that freaks me out.
Right. Yeah.
I guess there must be some part of the human brain that enables you to do that if you insist, But I was thinking. I mean, for a long time, because I wasn't quite as sharp as I thought it was for a while, and I had a music stand with loads of lyrics on just in case I got in a jam. And it just doesn't look good putting your glasses on and reading from a hymn sheet. It looks like you couldn't be bothered learning them.
You're right.
Although every band now,
yeah,
well, stadium acts, when you see the camera comes around the back of the drum kit, they've all got fucking auto cues.
They've got
even for songs they've been singing since the 60s.
Right.
Oh, and then there was one tour that Neil Young did with Willie Nelson's kids, Promise of the Real, the band's called. Because he'd always be like, turn that fucking thing off. If there was ever if he was doing a festival and there was a cue, auto cue, he'd say, turn that fucking thing off, man. That ain't rock and roll. And then he started doing his tour, and then all of a sudden, the fans would all be online going, man, have you seen the set list? It's like he's going deep, man. He's playing shit he's never played, man. It's like, fucking hell, he played this off that album, the B-side in Canada, and, it's like every night the fucking set list's different. And I went, I know what he's doing there. And there's these little apps now that are a little bit smaller than an iPad, and you just attach them to your microphone stand, and it looks like somewhere you might rest your drink, and it's got all the lyrics, and there's somebody sitting in the corner typing them. So fuck you, Neil.
Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't have many brain cells left. You know.
Not with the amount of dope he smokes.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, look, a few other tracks I wanted to mention here of your solo. You stone my soul. I think it shows your versatility on guitar on this one.
Right, yeah, that was
takes me back to that 70s soul R&B sound.
Yeah, that was kind of, I mean, it's got two chords all the way through. It was kind of like, I mean, I do like that kind of music, but it tends to sound a little hokey when I do it,
Yeah.
I think Blue-Eyed Soul was very difficult to pull off. But it's got a good chorus, and there's a good guitar solo in that, which probably, it's probably me trying to sound like the Isley Brothers,
Yeah. Well, I think it works. I think it worked on that one. The other one, similar, Lady by Degrees. Another one that sounds to me like it came from the 70s, especially the guitar on that one, Lady by
I was always incredibly proud of that song.
Yeah, yeah.
There's been a few instances where when I've really, as a songwriter, I've gone, oh man, this is so great. Honestly, it takes a lot for me to do that. I'm not somebody that can easily please myself by any stretch. So when I get excited about something, and with that, particularly the lyric, I was very pleased with it and the way it comes back on itself. And, there's been a few of those over the years, and I'll play them at a show. And, you get a golf clap.
Yeah.
It's like you finish the song and it's like. And I'm like, and I'm going, I just feel majestic, I'm like, I'm a genius for writing this, That's what I think I should be playing. I don't say that, I think it. And it's like, and then when they finish clapping, 2 or 3 people will go to the bar or to the John, and then you'll play something like Evangeline or whatever it's called.
Yeah, yeah. Then that gets them. Yeah. Right.
But it's always disappointing when that happens.
Yes.
But sometimes, because it was happening with the song, quite a recent song of mine, which I really like, called a song called "Making Silver Sing," which is all about musicians, and it's basically saying whichever level you play on. It's like the first level is like some kids playing in the back room of a pub, and the second verse is about an older guy playing in some small venue. Could be about me, I don't know. And then the last verse is about the superstar of the arena. And I'm really proud of this song. And I started playing it on every show. I play it on the piano. That's the other thing. Sometimes if you walk over to the piano, you get a few guys standing up, walking out, going to the toilet,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I kind of get that,
Right.
And so I play it, and it was. And I thought, you know what? I fucking love this song, so I'm just going to keep it in the set, and I'm going to keep playing it, and that's all there is to it. Because as a little, as a kindness to oneself, sometimes you have to. I mean, you got to make sure the punter's happy, but you've also got to make sure that you are. And I just kept playing it, and I've been playing it now for about 2 years. And now it's a showstopper, and it's got a lot to do with the fact that people need a history with a song.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like if there might have been one night in the past 2 years when that track's been on, and the girlfriend or the boyfriend have come over and given them a blowjob or something, I don't know. And it's all of a sudden it's in the universe, Whereas when they're just hearing a new song, they're a bit like, wonder what time. So get another pint, so go to the toilet, Whereas it's, that's why, you're invested with an emotional connection to it.
Right.
And the only way you can get that is for the song to be around a while.
Yeah. There's a lot of songs like that. I'll listen to it and it's almost subconsciously, I'll be thinking of a place. It's like this certain highway I was on. And then I started thinking about it. That was the first time I heard the song. That's why it takes me back there to that place, So it's
But
just,
also, do you have this other thing, which I have with a lot of songs? There doesn't even have to be a connection with the lyric of the song or where you were when you heard it or anything like that. It's just that the first time I heard that song, I was thinking about a certain place.
yeah,
I wasn't at the place.
right.
And now when I hear the song, I get the same vision. It's like your brain recognizes the music and puts the pictures up. That's why I always hated videos. Because,
Man.
because it just, I
Yeah.
hate making them, and I stopped making them.
Yeah.
I did a survey with my fans. I said, how do you feel about videos? And most of them said, we play it once just so we can hear the tune. We're not bothered about watching the video. So I said, well, I can just put it on SoundCloud in that case, or Bandcamp.
Very
because
yeah,
you want to
right.
create, when you read a book, you create. I remember when I read the first Alien book by Alan Dean Foster. And, because everybody was saying about Alien, how fucking terrifying the film was.
Yeah.
And I read the book and I invented all of this stuff. And I didn't think the film was scary at all, because my version of it was really scary, And it's like, so when you suddenly see a video for a track that you've heard, it's usually when the record comes out.
Yeah.
And you go, no. I don't want to see Billy Joel working down a fucking body shop in Brooklyn, while he's singing about his uptown girl. No.
That's so true, because I have very strong feelings about that. It harkens back to remember Video Killed the Radio Star.
Yeah.
And that song. And then one about Mark Burgess, one of his tracks, The Death of Imagination. I mean, that's so relevant, and it has been for years. That's the thing. I mean, leave it up to the individual listening to the song, to imagine what it's about. Don't have this video like you said, and tell them what it's about.
Well, why has everything got to be explained to you?
Right.
Who was it said? It was Quincy Jones that said, when you're doing a mix of a track, he goes, you're mixing it, and you got to leave a little space for God to walk through. And it's like with movies and visual imagery and all that. It's like, that's one of the reasons why I love films like Interstellar or 2001 or Blade Runner, or it's these films that don't go, this is what it's about, and she goes there and he does that, and his reason for doing that is because of that. Oh, you must have missed that bit, and then did it. And it's like when they're saying to Dylan, what's fucking, what's Gates of Eden about?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, don't tell me.
Right.
Let me work it out, And then if they do decide to tell you, you're often really disappointed, I mean, I didn't know that The Crystal Ship by the Doors was about crystal meth.
Right.
I thought it was about a ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's made us. I think it's made us lazy, and it's made us too dependent on media outlets telling us what everything is. So we put a mistrust in the media. I think that's really gone too far. We just verbatim, whatever they tell us, we buy it. We buy it. It's been two more tracks real quick. Trams in Amsterdam.
Oh my God.
I like the swirling keyboard.
That's the B-side of These Are the Days.
Yeah.
And we had, when I was doing that first album, Truth and Beauty, I'd been dropped by Epic, and we didn't have any money. So we were doing all the recordings on downtime. That means, you go in there at 2:00 in the morning, or on days when people aren't using it. and we needed a B-side, and we'd just done a European tour. And the thing I noticed about Amsterdam was every time I've ever been there, I've always nearly been killed by trams or bikes because they just move around silently and you're stoned.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what that was.
Right. And then you mentioned earlier Mark Bolan, and I have to talk about your cover of the Slider.
Oh
I think
yeah,
it's pretty faithful reproduction of the original. It's got the same chugging guitar.
yeah. Obviously, I was very pedantic about that
Mhm.
because you know, if you're talking about something like T-Rex, I mean, you know, they always say if you're going to do a cover, make it your own.
Right.
Which I sometimes I agree with, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I think you've just got to honor it.
Yeah.
And that's what I did with the Slider. And I was particularly chuffed when recently the Black Crows did an EP called, I think it was called 1972 or something. And they did 6 tracks from 1972. And the Slider was on there. And it's not a patch on mine. He's done it all wrong, you know. It's like I could never understand the wind. You know, you got to be that kind of fey Mark
Right.
Bolan thing. And he said, I could never. He's Rod Stewarted it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work.
I don't think I want to hear that version.
No, so you don't need to hear that now.
Well, talk about how well the tour went last year.
It was good, you know. I'd got a little bit of a problem. Every time I go out with a band, we call it Icicle Works, and it's usually on the anniversary or something. And it's very popular now to play, you know, albums in full, you know, which is not something that I particularly enjoy. I don't really like knowing what's coming next if I go and see a gig. Yeah, you know, there's an awful lot of kerfuffle, awful lot of organization, and I don't get to play any of my new stuff, you know. Basically, everything stops in 1990.
Yeah.
And once I've learned all the material, and you know, thankful to Baby J that I can still hit the notes, most of them, and most importantly of all, stand up for 2 hours. That's the big one.
Right.
With the heavy guitar. And once I go, okay, I can do that, I lose interest very quickly. And that kind of happened on that last jaunt, even though it was only 5 dates. And, you know, people are always asking for Icicle Works to go out and do stuff. And I just think I'm over it, you know. What I really like is doing me solo acoustic shows. And just because the solo acoustic, you know, some people might not come along because they think, oh, it's just a bloke sitting with an acoustic guitar. It's going to be boring, you know. And I do everything to avoid those pitfalls. It's not quiet. It's not polite. I make sure that the PA system is as loud as a band would be,
Yeah.
you know, so you're still getting the oomph,
Yeah.
you know, it's not quiet and you don't have to whisper, all that kind of stuff. And I can go anywhere with the set list. I mean, I have a set list that it's got a shape, because you know that's going to get a reaction. That's going to get a reaction, and then in the sort of middle bits, you can throw in whatever you want, and that's the exciting part. You know, you can do something you've never played before. You can do a brand new one, and I can talk a lot when I do my solo shows, which you can't do when you've got a band on stage.
No, you
We
can't.
all hate it when you do that, you know.
Yeah. No,
Because I'll be going, so anyway, blah, 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 and they'd be like, I should tune my guitar. What am I going to do for the next 10 minutes, you know?
Right. Or have a 15-minute drum solo. There you go.
Oh, God.
like those old rockers. Oh my. Yeah.
God forbid.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, what's been the reaction for Nabby Road?
Really good.
Yeah.
I don't, my days, I mean, said, it's had really good reviews in the press, and it hasn't been particularly easy for me to get reviewed in the press anymore. One of the, you'll know how this works, but we have a magazine over here called Mojo, which is very highly regarded and stuff. And I know quite a few of the people that write for it. But what happens these days is if you want to publicize your album, the deal is generally you take out a full page ad and they'll review it and they'll do a feature, and this will cost you, however much it's going to cost you, probably about 12,000-15,000 quid,
Yeah.
And my last couple of albums have both had very favorable reviews in Mojo, without me doing any of that. So I was pleased by that. I'm always pleased. Oh, wow. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. They put out
one of the few mags that still do CDs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like they've been doing it so long, they've come back in fashion.
Right.
But yeah, the reviews always been positive. I mean, I've always tried to avoid reading reviews.
Yeah.
Because somebody will say something, and if they say something that's a bit not offensive, but I wouldn't say something that wasn't particularly complimentary, I could just never get it out of my mind,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like that thing of somebody said about this particular track, oh, it's this, I mean, there's a track on Nabby Road called Guest List, and everybody loves it. It's become a really popular track, but with the first guy that got a copy of it went, a good album, but for Christ's sake, why did he include that dreadful, it sounds like fucking Dire Straits doing, Twisting by the Pool, And now, whenever anybody mentions Guest List, or if it comes on, I just think Dire Straits, Twisting by the Pool.
Right.
Can't get it out of my head. Don't think like of all the people who've gone, I love this song, it's great. I can't remember any of that,
Right.
And it's like the thing of when you're doing a gig, and if there's a lot of people there, and everyone's rocking and enjoying it, and then I will always look at some guy or gal as they're yawning.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what you take from it,
Yeah.
You don't go, oh, well, everyone was going mad. You go, well, that guy's yawning, looks bored shitless, man. And then you're like, excuse me, what's wrong? You're not enjoying it.
Yeah, you want to ask them, right? Well, I think musicians and artists by nature are sensitive beings, so you're definitely going to be part of it.
Yeah.
But I've learned myself collecting music not just to ignore the critics for the most part, and that's how I found out about other music. Is just digging and discovering it myself.
Just go ahead and
Yeah.
I mean, I write quite a few reviews on Facebook of, well, anything that's going really, but I always say, listen, it's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Don't not see it because I said it sucked. That's just what I think. And like we said before, you can change your mind on matters like that anyway.
I'm going to let you go because this has been a good long interview. We've covered a lot of material. Yeah.
I hope it's all come out for you when you've cut it up. Send us the link and we'll flag it up on socials.
Yeah.
Okay,
All
man.
right.
Have a good night.
All right. You too, Ian. I appreciate it.
Bye for now. Bye.
Bye.